And moving on, we have AJ coming to speak for us.
Hi everyone. Sorry, there were a lot of tech issues on my end in the US, so
I'm
we love that.
just glad to have you here now.
I apologize. Let's see. Let me share my screen and we'll go from there. All right. I will try my best to have the chat function um, available. Otherwise, just bug me if I don't see it. Please. I want to make sure that, I can answer as many questions as possible. Um, they're also doing like snow plowing around my apartment, so I also apologize for that, for what's going on. Um, so I was asked to talk about navigating sports and STEM as a Black trans person. Again, I'm pretty open to like all questions, so feel free to throw it in the chat, raise your hand, whatever the case may be. Um, so a little bit about me. So what I do. So my name is AJ Bryant. I use he/him pronouns. Um, from the other side of the water, so I'm in the U.S. I'm in my fourth year. I'm trying to get my bachelor's in kinesiology at Penn State. So that's basically the study of human movement. I know a lot of people ask that question, like, what is kinesiology? You kind of look at biomechanics and philosophy and human movement and physical education. It kind of all lumps together. I am the first transgender powerlifter at Penn State. I'm also the vice president of my chapter, of my OSTEM chapter at my school. And I'm also just recently now the vice president of inclusion, diversity, equity, and accessibility at OSTEM Inc. It's kind of why I know Avery and Ailsa and why I'm here today. And more about me is that I'm half Black, half Puerto Rican, and I was born and raised in Boston, Massachusetts, in the US. Um, I will definitely go over in my story and connect all of these. So, story time. I'm going to have some pictures. I don't have a lot of words on my slides. So, if you ever need me to clarify anything, please let me know. So, about me. So, these are some old pictures about me. I did mention that I am trans, but growing up in a city where it was predominantly Black, my mom realized that I had a lot of potential and wanted to get me into a school with better academics, a better program than I can succeed in and be where I am today. So she put me in the program. It was called Metco. It's a way to integrate white suburban schools. Um, so at a very young age, I was always just different. Um, at this point, I didn't know I was trans at all. I just knew that I was a different color. I was very involved with sports. In this photo in the right, it's actually softball, and my dad is on the left right here. So he's my coach. He's like, I look like him now that I transitioned, but just showing you on the team, like I was just always like the only person of color on my team, and you can just imagine like what that meant, what I was going through, just kind of always getting looks or treated differently. And one thing that did kind of help was having my dad as a coach because he was there when these things were happening, and he was like the leader, so he was able to make sure that I was safe going forward. Um, I started playing sports when I was 5 because I think regardless of who we are, what country, we try to find a hobby that we can meet people and feel included for something. So my outlet was sports for the longest time, um, and then probably around middle school is when I started kind of realizing that something was going on with my body. I didn't know what. When I was younger, I didn't really know any terms when it had to come to science, puberty, like any LGBTQ plus terms or anything. So I just felt weird. Like that was just really what I called it. Um, And then I was having some crushes on people on my basketball team, and they were girls, and I didn't really know what to do, how to react, and I told my dad, and he was just like, don't say anything. Not that he didn't accept me; it was just he didn't want it to be an awkward basketball team with 12, 13-year-old girls. Like he's just like, let's not do that. Um, so I went through, suppress some feelings, and nobody really wants to suppress their feelings or their identity or like be judged for that. So that was a very hard time, especially in middle school, because I think we're just all awkward by then. I mean, I still am awkward, but less awkward than I was in middle school. Um, so it was really hard just trying to like figure all of that out. And then I went to high school, and just I was really just trying to figure out what I wanted to do, because in the next 3 years, I need to figure out where I'm going to go to school and what I'm going to study and all those things. And I didn't even know who I was. I was like, am I a boy? Like, what is going on? Let alone trying to figure out what I wanted to study. Um, so probably 2 years further down the road, I realized that, well, I turned to Google. I feel like every every queer person turns to Google for something. Um, and I realized the term was transgender. And then I came out to my parents. My dad, he didn't have the education. So he was just like, "What do you mean?" So I was just explaining to him like, "I'm still your kid. I just want to transition into a man." And he was just like, "Okay." And then we had a talk about pronouns, and then we talked more of like hormones and everything else. My mom, on the other hand, being very Catholic, she was like, "Nope, that can't happen." I have an older sister, so she was just like, "I'm losing my daughter. Like, I have two kids, I have two daughters. Like, that's just how it is." So it was hard for her to like come around to it. Um, there's always a saying that I'm supposed to marry this tall, dark, handsome man and have these beautiful babies for my mom to have grandchildren. Little did she know I was going to be that man that she was talking about this whole time, not marrying that man. That was going to be me. Um, so that was kind of hard trying to figure that out. Um, and obviously, since I wanted to transition, what did that mean for sports? Um, and I realized, I couldn't be around, or I couldn't be on the teams that I was playing before. I couldn't play on those girls' teams. Um, and I wanted to transition. I was like, this is what I need to do, but now I'm sacrificing something that I finally felt like was a part of me. So I went to my school, I went to the athletic director, the person in charge of sports, and was like, I was like, I don't know what to do. Can I like, how do I play sports? Do I just switch over to the boys version of the sport? Um, and that was doable, but I feel like it was just a totally different environment. So I was just like, what, let's just try something different. I decided to play football, or I should say American football. Um, and you don't hear a lot about women playing American football whatsoever. Um, or like trans people playing football. It's always like this very masculine sport. And I'll be honest with you, I had a phase in during my transition where I was like, if I'm gonna be a man, like I need to be this strong like man that everyone thinks I'm just like the manliest man in the world. I don't know what that meant. That was definitely not attainable because I'm just a big softy. And but playing sports made me like realized like the different dynamics and everything that was going on. So American football was a little hard for the next 3 years of high school, but I kind of started figuring out, started making friends, definitely dealt with a lot of ridicule of not being seen as like a complete man, or people didn't want to tackle me because they still saw me as a girl, and stuff like that. But also being one of the handful of black people on the team. So there was obviously looks whenever we traveled for away games and stuff like that. So now we're kind of just like we just like figured out sports, but that's like after school. So what am I doing during school? Um, During school, I was the only one of the only like black people in my classes. There were about a handful, so I'd probably say like there were probably 15 black people out of 450 people in my year. And I would go to class, and since I was in the higher level of classes and I was taking APs and stuff like that, a lot of teachers just looked at me because I haven't had a black teacher until college. So I remember I went into AP Calculus, and my teacher was like, "Oh, are you in the right room?" A lot of students just looked at me, and usually have my schedule printed out because I know that that's gonna happen. So I showed my teacher. She was like, "Oh, okay, like that's definitely what you scheduled." And a lot of people were just looking at me, and I was like, "Okay, is this gonna be like the whole year? Like I'm not really feeling this." Um, so I decided I was just like, I'm gonna sit in the front of the room because they can stare at me, but I don't have to worry about them behind me. And that was just kind of how I went about the whole semester or the whole year of calculus. Um, I was taking like anatomy and physiology, so like you're talking like deep science courses, and nobody thought that that would be me or would be a black person. And there was always a question of, what do you want to study? Where are you going to go? And all these things. And when I told people the types of colleges that I applied to, people were surprised. There's like, there's no way you're going to get into that school. The acceptance rate is this number and that number and this and that. Or, it has this percentage of white people. So like, there's nowhere you're going to go. Um, I mean, I didn't get into my first choice, which is fine. I did get into my second one, um, which is Penn State, and studying um, kinesiology. But it didn't always start like that. I actually got into Penn State as a pre med major, pre medicine. You know, just wanted to do that, and then I really just wanted to help people. But I'll tell you, there were not a lot of black pre medicine students either, um, and so again, now we're back to I'm the only one doing this. I'm the only black person doing this. I'm the only trans person in this program. I was always the only something of a program or a class. So again, it goes into how do I navigate this? What do I do? So again, my outlet was sports. So in college, I decided I was going to powerlift. Um, I realized that this team was co-ed, so there was men and women on the team, but I would be the first trans person on this team. Um, Going to college, and dealing with all the ridicule in the past years, I didn't know if I wanted to say anything, did come out to people, let people know that I was trans whatsoever. I had no idea. Um, and then I realized, I'm starting to feel comfortable with myself. There wasn't a person who did this for me, so I'm going to be the person who's going to do this for the future generation. So I let people know. Word got out really quickly on a public campus. Then people from a local article was like, we want to write about this. So I was actually featured in our local newspaper. And it was funny because I had powerlifting practice and I had a photographer just kind of like taking pictures of me working out, and people were really confused. And I was not doing it for like, oh, like let me have like people just look at me. I really want to get my story out there in order to, like I said, help the future generation and say like, trans people can be in sports. Trans people can be doing amazing things. Like I'm AJ, I'm doing all these things who happens to be trans. Is really what I was trying to go for. Competitions. So some things that, that were very toxic, I guess you could say, of USAPL or USA Powerlifting has been really hard. So my first couple competitions, my team at Penn State, very supportive. However, when you go out in the public, there are going to be spectators who look at you They're wondering why people were wondering why I was built different. People were wondering why I was like the only black person. People were wondering why I wasn't quote unquote lifting enough. I was here to lift, my personal records. I was here to do what I wanted to do. Um, but I remember a mom was like, why is he not lifting as much as the next person? And keep in mind, this is my first competition. And I was like, I bet you she couldn't lift that. And it wasn't anything to do with like race or gender or anything. It's just people pick at other people when they can't do something. So I kind of had that mindset in my head. It was like, I can do this, so I'm going to keep doing it. And that's kind of what's pushed me today. And as you can see on the left, there's a poster that's talking about I turned the ridicule into fuel, and now I'm the first transgender powerlifter at Penn State. So if I just took all that ridicule that people said to me since I could remember, I would not be doing anything with my life or be successful whatsoever. Um, so a lot of the times is I just took people said, I kind of either stored it somewhere or just completely just moved on with it. Um, and I was like, I'm just gonna do me, and my friends will come in the picture, people will come and go, but I need to make sure that I'm happy. And I know that sounds like selfish and everything, but that's kind of what I've been living by. And it's got me here, and I've met these amazing people at OSTEM. Um, and now I can say that I know people in the UK, right? Um, and I remember, so one of the reasons that I have some of these pictures is that on the bottom in the middle, I have a picture with my silver medal. So I had second place. And people were looking at that. We're like, oh, like he's on hormones, which means he has like extra strength. Um, I don't have extra strength. Like I was working my butt off in order to get to feel included, to feel like I deserved it to be in that spot. And another screenshot it on the top right corner. At the very bottom, it says Men's Raw Junior. And it's just nice to show that I was seen in the men's category because a lot of times people might think otherwise. So that was really nice. And then Queer Fitness, it's on Spotify. Um, and I was actually interviewed about that if you want to hear more. But fast forward to now. So what am I doing now? So I'm still powerlifting. However, USAPL has put a ban on trans lifters competing. That ban was 2 weeks after I got second place, after I got my silver medal. So it was really hard. It's still there, so we're still pushing with the law and figure out how to combat this. So I've basically been doing a lot of things on my own. I still have my team supporting me. And so I do I do as much as I can. But when we go to competitions, I'm more on the back burner. I'm more behind the scenes. I help out the current lifters. I help out my friends, and I help like train them. I do what I can. But as of right now, I cannot go on that platform due to USAPL. I know some people have mentioned like, why is there a ban? So to be honest, it seems like USA Powerlifting, their doctors on their board aren't very familiar with trans people and hormone replacement therapy. It seems like they're all like testosterone equals steroids, and they just see it. They're like, oh, you're on steroids. Like that's illegal. You can't be doing that and compete. And we've had plenty of doctors who are very interested or very they have a lot of knowledge on hormone replacement therapy. Um, and the USAPL doctors didn't want to listen to that. But you could see if you took my T levels and took a cis man's T levels, I would be the same, if not lower. And people just thought like, oh, I'm more of a threat. I'm like, I can't even get first place, so I'm not really a threat whatsoever. Um, Yeah, so that's kind of simple terms of why there's a ban, and obviously there's more politics that go into that, but that's kind of where we're standing with the ban. Um, Recently, they have an MX category, so they're trying to say, "Oh, we'll just put all the trans and non-binary people in one group, and they'll be fine." That's just making us in an other category. And then I looked into more of that. So that's in trans and non-binary people who are not on hormones go in the special category. So I still can't compete because I'm on hormones. So as much as I try to find a loophole, I still can't, which is very unfortunate. Um, Keep strong and move to CrossFit. A lot of people have told me to move to CrossFit, and I'll be honest that I have been thinking about it. Um, Claire Avery, there's a Q&A section, but I can't click it. Is there any way that you can read out the questions?
Yeah, there's two that we'll just do quickly, and then you should be able to type answers as well. So the first one is, do you have any advice on helping family members to adjust to pronouns? I'm newly out to non-binary to my family, and they don't seem to be adjusting well to using they, them now.
Okay, so how to, get people to use your pronouns? Was that kind of like
Yeah.
yeah. Um, as annoying as it might be, definitely be on them about it. Like I like to say it's as easy as remembering a name, right? Um, if they're gonna know you by your name and they're gonna say it properly, like they should also know your pronouns. Um, so I try to correct people. I've had people at the very beginning of my transition kept saying she, and I was like, "You don't see these." At the very beginning, I was like, "You didn't see these little hairs?" No, but in all seriousness, I was just like, like I use he him pronouns. Um, Honestly, take up that space. Like people are able to just walk around and have their pronouns and know who they are, and we're like figuring it out now. um, so I would say definitely be on them about it. I put my pronouns pretty much everywhere I can. Um, like email signatures, I just put it on Canvas for my class like attendance, so it's there. So I definitely try to do that, so like people are just like, oh, that's your name, like we're just going to associate with your pronouns and so on. It is definitely hard, so I commend you for being the strong individual that you are. I'm not going to say that it's going to be easy road, but just stick with it, and your pronouns are definitely valid. Don't make it seem like anyone's going to think like it's not. um, yeah.
So we've got one more answer in the Q&A, and then if you're free after to just answer people's questions in the chat, that'd be really appreciated.
Yep.
So this one is, what do you think the best way professors can support trans students of color?
The best way. Yeah, so I've had a lot of professors, especially white cis professors, not really know. They seem to be tiptoeing around the conversations that they want to talk about. I've honestly had professors be afraid to say the word black, and I'm like, it's not like an insult. You can say the word black. You can say people of color. I think it more has to boil down to whether or not the professor wants to learn. Because as much as we can throw things at them, they're not going to read them unless they physically want to. So I definitely try to sometimes have a talk with my professor if it's involving me specifically, but I feel like it has to do with a lot of programming and education and what they want to do at the very beginning. So I even talk about um, if you have the space to do it. Sometimes, our OSTEM chapter, we do trainings. We work with the center, with our LGBTQ plus center, but also we have like a cultural center. We have a multicultural center. We have like people of color centers that try to put on um, programs as well and trainings to help educate professors on certain things. Um, because sometimes professors just go through the curriculum and they don't really worry about anything else. So we definitely try to do that, and I will pull my professor to the side. But I think it really all boils down to training and their willingness to learn.
Okay, thank you so much for coming to speak, and look forward to hearing from you a bit later as well on our panel.
Yeah, no problem. Sorry about all the tech issues. I know I didn't have a lot of time, but you can always email me and I'll definitely be around to answer some questions in the chat.
Thank you so much.